The George Ranch Historical Park has a variety of opportunities to get hands-on with history, but few are as tasty as the Fireside Supper series. Chef Nick Castleberg explains.
This event is a primitive cooking class geared at getting people comfortable with controlling heat over an open fire source, whether it be in the hearth here at the 1830s or later at the 1860s with the wood-burning stove. The idea behind it was to take people who are intimidated with modern kitchens, take them and teach them how to cook over primitive fire, and then when you go back into the kitchen and you have heat available with just the turning of a knob, it removes all of the intimidation factor that a lot of people seem to have with cooking. Tonight's menu, we start off with a pinto bean soup, which of course Mr. Jones and family, as they came here from Arkansas, carried pinto beans and rice, two dried stores that traveled very well. Then we go into a sauteed dandelion greens with fatback and onion. If you're not familiar, fatback is salt pork, salt cured, no smoke flavor like bacon would have. Very, very common here in early Texas, and this being geared for the 1830s site, it was a food source that all early Texas pioneers knew. The dandelion greens, of course, grow wild out here in April and May, and we gather them and cook them, and we know for a fact that the Joneses would have eaten all kinds of edible fauna. And then we have a venison vegetable stew. In the early years, as Mr. Jones was here and gathering cattle and starting his stock farm, so to speak, there was a lot of hunting or sustenance living going on, a lot of farrow hog and a lot of venison. And we'll thicken that with a roux, which is a cooking technique which adds flavor. When you have limited ingredients, you do everything you can to build flavors. So we'll take oil and flour, cook it together. Those of you that are familiar with gumbo and things like that, it's a secret to those kind of dishes. It richens it, it thickens it, and more importantly, it adds flavor. And then we'll finish off with Indian frybread, which is a very traditional Native American dish. And we know that Mr. Jones spent several years in the Indian nations long before he went to Arkansas and then eventually here to Mexico, now Texas. So we felt obliged to include in this particular meal package something that was representative of the native peoples, and that's the Indian frybread. Roots are obviously very important to us that work here at the ranch, and foodways, specifically cooking food, is a very rich field that we can delve into. We can do it ourselves, but it opens up so many doors to food preservation. Some people's, their religious beliefs dictate how they cook and what they can cook. So it opens doors into so many other avenues of the life of the early pioneers in this case. So by going into the cooking as we progress through the evening, we'll be talking about different ingredients and some of the histories involved. The Dutch ovens, of course, we'll be talking about those. The trivets, we'll be talking about those. Little tools that over the years people have learned to create and use alongside the open fire cooking technique, if you will, to enable to be able to cook multiple dishes like we'll be doing tonight over one constant fuel source. People are usually very intimidated, especially if they don't have a lot of experience or practice. We start off very basic. When the guests get here, we'll start off by talking about fire and the properties of fire, the fire triangle. When you know what it is that you're working with, you take some of the mystery out of it. It tends to take a little bit of the intimidation factor out. And then we'll get them up close to the fire and teach them techniques. For instance, when we're using the hearth, we'll be pulling coals out of the fire and setting either the trivet or the Dutch oven on top of those coals so they're not directly up in the fire, which is a huge difference, especially in August when it's 150 degrees out here in the shade. So different techniques will teach them the age-old philosophy of be prepared. If you have the right tools for the right job, it makes life a whole lot easier. So we're going to explore all those different tools that were available to the early pioneers. And in doing so, again, we're going to get them really comfortable with primitive cooking. And once you're comfortable with something at a primitive level, it's much easier to now go into a modern kitchen and try again.
For more information about fireside suppers, as well as historic Saturday lunches and chuck wagon breakfast, visit the park's website at www.georgeranch.org. For No Time Like the Past, I'm Stacee Hawkins.